There it is. All right. Welcome, everybody, to this beautiful day, at least in Austin, Texas. And we're going to be talking once again, this is exciting, polyamory and the law, preparing your polycule for your future. It's going to be fun. Tune in.
Practicing Polyamory, real-life perspectives from the imperfect people of polyamory. The mission of the Practicing Polyamory podcast is to provide a platform for all of the real-life, flawed humans that practice polyamory so that we might all learn from one another and grow as a community. Enjoy the show.
Still gets me dancing. All right, everybody, welcome on this beautiful day. Before we jump in and chat with today's awesome guest, I really quickly want to remind everybody to please follow the show on whatever social media platform you prefer. You can find us everywhere at Practicing Polya. And if you're listening on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcast app, please subscribe and leave a review. We're really looking for reviews, so please leave a review. And thank you so much for helping us show up higher on those search results. And if you want to support the show, there's a really easy way. You're already paying for your insurance. Why not work with a Polyam insurance professional? Send me a DM on whatever your favorite social media is, at Practicing Polya. Ask me about your malpractice or errors and omissions insurance. Would love to help you out. And as always, lastly, want to remind you, if you are listening to this podcast, you are a welcome guest to be on the show. If you are actively polyam curious, or a professional serving the polyamorous community, we want to hear your story. If you are disabled, BIPOC, pan, bi, demi, gay, straight, sex worker, kinkster, queer, lesbian, trans, NB, arrow, ace, ooh, I did it all in one breath. Whatever it is, I want to hear your story. The more stories we hear, the more the world learns about us, the more representation we have, and the better we can serve our community. So go to practicingpolyamory.com and sign up today. All right, everybody, that is my spiel. Best part of the show, my favorite, get to introduce our awesome guest today. Today's guest wants to help you build the life you choose with the people you love. She is a Texas attorney who offers legal solutions for people who, like herself, have an unconventional lifestyle. Standard and traditional legal services don't always work for those of us in the polyam community, and our guest is committed to providing people with the creative and flexible tools they need to build a life that suits their unique goals and values. Now, today's guest is not the attorney with the fancy downtown office, expensive suits, and exorbitant hourly rates. She is a modern, web-based attorney who provides consultations when you are ready, without you needing to get dressed up, head into town, and look for parking. Plus, if you're an introvert who hates making phone calls, rest assured that a lot of the necessary communication can be handled by text and email. I am super excited to dive in once again to polyamory and the law. Joining us today, and I love the name of your law firm, from Chosen Family Law out of Austin, Texas. Welcome to the show, Stacey McLarty.
It's great to be here, James.
Oh,
That's great.
Okay, because we're in Texas. You went with the cowboys shooting the guns. I like it. Stacey, thank you so much for joining me today. Really appreciate it. Really excited to have you on. I'm just going to start with a little bit of background. You told me right before the show started, you are also polyamorous. So a polyam lawyer. This is really exciting. Tell me a little bit about your history and the things that you... Let's just start with the history. We'll go with that and jump in from there.
Okay. I've been polyamorous since about 2006. I have two partners on a hinge and a V, which means that my two partners are involved with me, but not with each other. I've been with Andy for about 13 years, and we don't live together, and we're not legally married. But I've been with my partner, Kevin, for about 6 years. And we are legally married, and we live together. And we met as part of the Burning Man community, the regional Burning Man community here in the Austin area. And I'm just extraordinarily lucky that I have such a supportive family. My parents, I'm out to everybody, and also my adult kids live close, so we hang out, have game nights. Of course, pre-COVID, there was a lot more social stuff going on.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where I am in my polyamory universe now. Oh, go
Now,
ahead.
you said something that struck me, and I want to kind of dive into the personal side of things. We'll get to the professional, but since we're talking on the personal side of things, I don't know if this is a rare thing that happens, that you've been with one partner for 13 years and you're not married and you don't live together, and the one that you've been with for 6 years you are. Andy, right, was the one that you've been in with for 13. How did he take it when you said, hey, I'm getting married to somebody that I haven't been with for quite as long as you?
Well, I had actually been dating Kevin for several years before we got married, but it involved a lot of communication. And one of the things that I thought was really important is to make sure that he knew how much I loved him and chose him. I wrote him a love letter that was a lot like wedding vows the night before I got married to Kevin, and shared that with him, and made it really clear. I may not be legally married to you, but I'm choosing you every single day.
That's beautiful. That's lovely. It's
I think he's wonderful.
nice, perfect. Double with the tombstone. I love it. But yeah, I mean, obviously he's a wonderful person, and it's just an interesting situation there, and I think it speaks a lot to the way that we get to, as it says in the name of your law firm, choose our families, right? We get to choose our relationships and our relationship styles. If you don't mind, I want to stay kind of on this personal topic. I promise we'll get to the professional stuff too, because polyamory in the law definitely excites me, and I want to see things that are happening for you, and things that you fight for over there in Texas. But on the personal side of things, we talk a lot also about our relationship escalators. Were you expecting to be on a relationship escalator with either of your partners when you started dating?
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, when I started dating Andy back in 2008, um, we were very light touch. It's like, okay, we're not going to promise that this is going anywhere. We're just going to enjoy each other's company. And obviously our relationship has developed and deepened. And then with Kevin, I really hadn't planned on getting remarried, but it just seemed like the right thing for us to do.
Nice. I won't pry too much and ask you why or anything like that. But it's really interesting to me that we have this opportunity, right? When we're in our monogamous relationships, we really are on the escalator. Those are the expectations, is to eventually move in together, get married, grow old and retire to Florida, right? I heard that somewhere and I thought it was hilarious. And so we have these expectations, but in polyamory, we don't necessarily have to stick to those rules. And especially in your case, where you were with one partner for a longer period of time, it's just an interesting development. I wonder if you would share at least what your thoughts were, when you were making that decision. I mean, not necessarily when he proposed, then there was that moment, right? Or talking about it beforehand, maybe. What were some of the things that you considered when you decided, okay, well, I'm going to shift and go ahead and get married? What were some of the things that you were considering?
Well, for one thing, when you get legally married, you're part of a team that is financially entangled, and so
Mhm.
you really have to be on the same page with when it comes to how you handle money, and have the same sorts of goals and stuff like that. And it's not a value judgment if you don't match up 100% with somebody else, but that was an important thing in my relationship, is that I wanted to be on the same path financially, and have the same idea of how to handle money in the day to day. And also, like, being married is a big romantic thing, and
Hmm.
sometimes it just feels like it fits. Um, and I want to make it really clear that this doesn't mean that Andy has any less of a place in my life.
Hmm.
Andy's actually the person that I've named in my medical power of attorney to make decisions, um, ultimate decisions if I become too sick to communicate my medical wishes. He's the one on that form that is going to make those decisions, not Kevin. So they're important to me in really different ways.
Wow. Wow. I love that. Okay. Last personal question here. And then we're going to jump in and talk about some of the professional stuff, because you've already touched on a few things, which is the finances and legal protections there, making sure that somebody else is named, somebody who's not your legal husband is named, or legal spouse is named as medical power of attorney. So we'll get into that professional stuff. But the last personal question, when the wedding ceremony happened, uh, did Andy play a role? And if so, what was that role?
I actually asked him if he wanted to have some participation in the ceremony, and he's just not a super public person, and so he was at the ceremony and celebrated with us. And when we got our family pictures taken, he's right there. You can see on my website, my favorite picture is the three of us together. That's from our wedding. And
Got it.
so yeah, it was so good because I was able to have all my family there. It was good.
That's so cool. That's so cool. I love it. That warms my heart. That's a happy poly moment for sure. Okay. All right. Enough of the personal stuff. We had a good time there. Let's talk polyamory and the law. So a couple of things that you touched on is when we get legally married, there are automatically protections and automatically things that get assigned to our legal spouse that maybe our non-legal spouse, or non-legal married partner, whatever, doesn't necessarily have. Can you just touch on a few of the major differences that couples privilege type of things, or whatever we want to call it, that Kevin will benefit from, that maybe Andy doesn't? What are some of the big things that Kevin gets?
Well, I mean, it's really, there's a lot of things that are just kind of expected and customary, um, and we're our own family doing our own thing. The people who come to me, who want help, like building a family, have so many different needs. A lot of them have kids, and they want to make sure that their kids are taken care of if the legal parents pass away, that the
Mhm.
third or fourth parent have have the kids if the legal parents pass away. Handling finances is another thing. If you know, anybody can get a joint checking account, but sometimes people come and they want to buy a house together, or they want to handle their finances together, and maybe they need something a little more complicated, like a trust. So those are the kind of things that when somebody wants this issue solved, that if you were married, it would just be kind of automatic. We look for
Mhm.
ways to do that by contract or agreement, or just using the tools that exist out there in the law right now.
The contracts is something that you mentioned. And before I go on, we do have some people watching and listening. So I just want to throw this out there. If anybody has any questions for Stacey, go ahead and drop them in the comments. We'll get those read as we're getting on the show. But contracts was something that you just mentioned. And I did have a chance to have a couple of lawyers on last week as well. It was pretty great. They were up in Oregon. And they mentioned that the law really loves contracts. So just kind of in general, wherever we are in the country, if we have contracts in place, then the law really looks to honor those as much as possible. So I'm guessing that you would agree with that. And if so, do I have to get a lawyer to write up a contract?
Yes and no. The standard lawyer answer is it depends.
I love that. That's the standard tax answer, the standard insurance
Dude, I
answer.
almost had you.
Exactly. Almost got you.
So take, for example, people who want to live together. So like one of the really common contracts for people who are living together is just a lease agreement. So, how are you both going to engage with this, with the property? And that you really need to make sure that you have your legal documents in place. But also, it may be just as important to have a document that is not a legal document, that's maybe just a living together agreement, that isn't something like binding and that you're going to take to court, but just spells out the understanding of like, how often are we going to take out the trash, and how many pets are we going to have in this household, and that sort of thing. When you're talking about people involved in a romantic relationship, you may also want to have like a cohabitation agreement that spells out that you're not married. One of the things that in our common law states, you could be married if you call yourself husband and wife, you live together. You could find yourself legally married, and for some people that could be problematic. There are some like benefits, or if you get alimony from another state, that might stop if you're considered legally married. And so you may want to spell out something that says, we're intending to live together, but we do not intend to be married. And this is the limit of our relationship. So there are definitely things that you should have legal help involved, but there are plenty of things that just really need a good, honest conversation, and then write down what you decide to do.
There are contracts in.
I wasn't aware that was something a person could do.
I love that clip every time. You mentioned putting a contract in place to actually say we are not married, and so this is specific to common law states where basically if we live together long enough, if I live with somebody long enough and share finances and all that stuff, the state would just automatically consider us married. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. There are legal elements that you would have to prove to show that you were common law married in Texas. And one of them is living together. One of them is holding out to your community. And the third one is that you show an intent to get married. And that could be inferred from, do you have a big ceremony and get together and exchange rings? So if you have all of those three things, then you could be considered married in the state of Texas. And there are other common law marriage states as well. And this is really interesting for our poly folks too, because, before same-sex marriage was legal, obviously those folks, before same-sex marriage was legal, they wouldn't be considered common law marriage. But after the Obergefell case, like now, some of those folks who have been together for a long time, their common law marriage is being backdated to before gay marriage was legal. And so that has financial implications in the case of divorce or wrongful death or something like that.
Very interesting.
So it's a wide open map for poly folks. There are a couple of places in the Northeast that are acknowledging multi-person domestic partnerships. As far as I know, there's no place in the world that you can be married to three people, or more than two people. Right. But, what is that going to look like if that situation changes and then we apply the common law marriage to our poly situations?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. I forget the name of the town, but Massachusetts, they did what's the word I'm looking for? Recognize multi-partner relationships in their documents. I wonder, have you read anything about that? And I guess the question that I'm kind of going for here is, if you and Kevin are legally married, and say Andy moves in with the two of you, is there any way to get like the common law domestic partnership or something like that for all three of you? Or if it's not available now, with what's happening in Massachusetts, and hoping, fingers crossed, that starts to spread, towards our states, right, all the way across the country. Is that kind of theoretically the way that it would work?
Yeah, I'm not seeing Texas as being an early adopter of multi-person domestic partnership.
Yeah, I think it'll be a while for Texas.
Maybe, but yes, ultimately that's something that could happen.
So in Massachusetts, I'm thinking that might be kind of what would be happening over there. That's pretty cool. I mean, it's a step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, Texas maybe not, but you had something?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was thinking, one of the things that benefits not just polyamorous folks, but other people in intentional families is, if there could be changes in like the local ordinances for housing, how many unrelated adults can live together. There are lots of places in the law where it would be really exciting if there were some changes made to accommodate families that didn't look like a married couple and maybe their kids.
Can you give me an example, like what you mean by that?
Well, like in a lot of places, you can't have more than X number of unrelated adults, meaning legally not related,
Mm-hmm.
living in the same household. And that would be difficult if you had partners that you wanted to live with, that you weren't legally married to or weren't, your biological family. And so, if the ordinance limiting the people who could live together were changed, then that would be a boon for polyamorous families and people who just want to live together, as a family who maybe aren't romantically involved.
I did not even realize that there were ordinances saying that only a certain number of unrelated adults could live in a particular house. I didn't even know that was a thing. So
yeah, there's a new organization that Diane Adams is part of. That's the Polyamory Legal Advocacy. I think it's coalition, but they're starting to look at all the different ways that things could be improved for a lot of different types of chosen families.
could you repeat that name for me?
I think it is the Polyamory Legal Advocacy Coalition.
Okay.
It's definitely a C.
No worries. I was asking because one of the things that I'm it's just kind of striking this chord in my head over and over and over again is this idea of some kind of activism, some kind of finding an organization like what you're talking about to maybe become a part of, or talk to, see how we can continue to get our word out there, get these, Texas may not be an early adopter in the laws that are going to benefit and equalize whatever laws for us polyamorous folks, but whatever we need to do, whatever we can do in each of our states. I mean, I'm in California, you're in Texas. I don't know where our listeners are right now, but I know that we're all over the place. And the more that we, have an opportunity to come together, find organizations like, one more time, what was the name of it, if you can think of it?
Polyamory Legal Advocacy Coalition. I think it's
Polyamory Legal Advocacy
PLAC.
Coalition. Some PLAC.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yes.
So the more that we can find organizations like that and work together, it's all about all of us raising our voices and bringing about change, the change that we want.
Well, that's cool, baby. I mean, you know how it is.
Yeah, we'll get all Danny Zuko on them. So more
yeah,
planning.
and some of some of
Go
that
ahead.
change is just like in the day-to-day life of people who have alternative lifestyle families. There are not very many of us attorneys who have familiarity with polyamorous
Hmm.
families, families in the BDSM community. There's a lot of overlap, like I said, with the burner community.
Right.
And lots of other groups here, and just having somebody that can sit down with you and go through, like, okay, what are your goals, what are you trying to accomplish for your family, what are the things that are most important to you, without judgment,
Hmm.
and help you look at different solutions. That's what I'm trying to do.
That's what it's all about, is finding ways to be of service and continue to help our community flourish and grow. Um, when it comes to other ways of planning, other ways of protecting and planning our chosen family, what are some things that you would tell somebody who maybe is just opening up their relationship or is just exploring polyamory? What are some things maybe that you would say, hey, get this document in order, that way you don't have an issue later on?
um, well, I think really when people are first opening up, what they really need to do is have those hard conversations with maybe their existing partner about finances and how they expect things to go forward. I think when you've developed a relationship that has multiple partners, then you can start looking at things like including them in your will, making
Hmm.
sure that they're included. Everybody knows who your medical power of attorney is. If you have kids, it's
Hmm.
really important to know what to do for the care of those kids. If you've got a partner who's moved in and is helping, or is part of the parenting group, then there's an authorization that you can have where a non-parent can do things like take your kid to the doctor and enroll them in school, and basically give that other person who's not a legal parent the ability to act on behalf of the kiddos. So those are some of the things that come up, but they're not at the very beginning of opening up. They're really more at the we've developed a relationship with people, and now we want to create some structure.
Makes a lot of sense. So when opening up, the first thing that you mentioned was the finances.
Mhm.
What are some topics? What are some things that, if I'm opening up my relationship with somebody, we're talking about finances. Is there anything specific that I need to make sure to talk about? I mean, I have no idea where to begin.
Well, some of the families that I work with, and yeah, and these are folks at the point of moving in together, or maybe they've already moved in together.
Hmm.
You might have three people who are together, and maybe they're a triad or a throuple, and two of those people have significant income, and maybe the third person is the one that stays home with the kids and they don't have income. And how do you want to share those resources? How do you want to pay the bills and stuff like that, and make sure that the person who isn't bringing in income, that they're valued, and that they have you know protection and resources, um, given their contribution. So that's one of the things that comes up.
I love that idea. It's very, very relatable. That, to have that third person that maybe stays home with the kids. The other two are working out, wherever it is, and that third person, or that, that other person is, I don't know, third just sounds like ranking, but not what I mean. Just that other person is staying home and deserves to also have some kind of protection as well. Um and
I think
the thing that go ahead.
the other thing that I would talk about too is that I know divorce isn't a fun topic, but that is
Ooh.
also a way that you're building, you're rebuilding your family. And there's a lot of ways that having a good divorce, having a non-conflict divorce, or at least a minimal conflict divorce, that can actually really help, the individuals in those relationships and their other partners and the community too. And so I think that's something that's really valuable that a lot of the poly folks bring to the table. It's like we don't want to get into too high conflict of a situation, because these are small communities, and you're going to see your ex again a lot.
Right.
And if you have kids, then you're never not going to be part of their family. And so I think people really understand the importance of, when you do have to make that hard decision to, break up, to treat the other person with respect and, as generous of a spirit as you can.
I love that. A generous spirit. When, I think that that's something that also is within our community, that we just generally break up better. I mean, sometimes, maybe not all the times. I don't know. Maybe it's just my experience, but I think with, the ability to de-escalate relationships and kind of having that language and different styles or different ways to love the people that are important in our lives, we just have that ability a little bit more. So just to kind of recap, we were talking finances, we were talking divorce. One of the things you mentioned was the medical power of attorney, guardianship for children. Is there anything else that we missed? Any final thoughts in case I forgot to ask something, just something that you would want to leave with the community before we go?
I think those cover the top things. And of course, with the pandemic this year, that having that medical power of attorney and having a will, those things are really at the top of the list. And I know you asked, do we have to have a lawyer for everything? The medical power of attorney, at least in Texas, this is a form that you can get at the Department of State Health Services website. You can fill the form out. You need a couple of witnesses or a notary, but you don't need a lawyer for it. And it's one of the very few forms that you can feel confident, yeah, I can do this myself. And so I really recommend that everyone get their medical power of attorney straightened out, especially if you have a non-traditional family that maybe the medical profession wouldn't necessarily recognize.
Perfect. Well, Stacey, I want to thank you so much for giving us some of your valuable time. I really appreciate it. It was really great to hear not just the professional, but also some of your personal story. Really, really cool stuff. And, look forward to chatting with you again. Oh, last thing. I'm about to forget. If people want to work with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
My website is Chosen Family Law TX, and I think it's scrolling across the bottom of the screen. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram by my name, Stacey McLarty, STACEY MCLARTY. And I'm also brand new to TikTok, and I have a tiny presence on Twitter at Texas Poly Lawyer.
At Texas Poly Lawyer.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you again so much, Stacey. It has been truly a pleasure.
Thank you, James. I've really enjoyed this.
And thank you, as always, to our live listening audience as well. Don't forget, you can ask questions. So tune in tomorrow. Tune in next Monday and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so that you can get the show with no commercial interruptions. If you don't catch us live, download the show on the podcast, then you get some commercials, but hey, it's cool. It gives me a penny every time you listen. I appreciate it. If you want to support the show, sign up for Patreon, where you get access to commercial-free RSS feed, as well as tuning in live. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, wherever it is that you download your podcasts. And of course, if you haven't already, please leave us a review. We'll really appreciate it. All right, everybody, that is all we've got for the day. Thank you all so much. And as always,
Have a nice day!
Thank you for tuning in to the Practicing Polyamory podcast. Would you or someone in your Polycule like to be a guest? Sign up at practicingpolyamory.com and join the conversation. Please support us by subscribing, liking, and following us on social media at Practicing Polya by clicking any of the affiliate links on our website, or by subscribing at